Pledge?
Yeah.
Sing the Ukrainian national anthem.
No.
You need a gavel.
Good evening, folks. We are here on an off-cycle meeting. We've got a pretty brief agenda, well, relatively brief agenda. We've got an appointment and some interviews to conduct this evening. As we do with every meeting, I'd like to lead this meeting off with a pledge of allegiance led by our clerk, Matthew Nordhaus.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Mr. Clerk. Okay, so our agenda this evening is to have a introduction and a riveting interview with the candidate for the Director of Public Works, and then we'll get into some interviews with some potential appointment for our fire chief, our full-time fire chief. So at this time, I don't know, Mr. Town Administrator, if you have any comments leading into this?
Sure, thank you, Mr. Chair. Just to let the public that watches our meetings every opportunity they get know the process that we went through for filling the DPW director. We advertised it on the Mass Municipal website. We formed a committee that consisted of myself, Select Board Member Glavy, Chris Stoddard, as well as Joe Layden and Michelle Viberg participated as. Oh, I'm sorry, Chief Penard, thank you. We interviewed 3 candidates, and there was, although all 3 candidates were great and they had great qualifications, one rose to the top, and that was Stephen Yanley. Did I have that right, Steve? So this will give you a little bit about Stephen. Stephen's been employed with the town of Chelmsford for the past 22 years, moving up from a staff engineer to assistant town engineer to assistant DPW director that he held from September of 2013. Stephen came highly recommended by his peers over in Chelmsford. Paul Cohen had nothing but good things to say about you, and as well as all the references checked out. So it's my recommendation, and looking for the board's confirmation on that appointment to Stephen Yanley for the DPW director.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Chair, I would recuse myself from this.
Understood, thank you. Mr. Yanley, if you'd come forward. Let me just turn these lights on. Steve, thanks for coming forth and, applying to the position, and congratulations on getting to this point. At this point, I'll ask the members if they have any questions of you, and to start that off, just ask, Anthony gave you a nice little introduction there, but just give us a little introduction about yourself, your professional experience, and why you are interested in becoming our DPW director.
Sure. As I'm sure most of you know, my wife and I, we lived in town here for almost 21 years, or a little more than 21 years. Professionally, I worked private sector for almost 9 years, and then been with the town of Chelmsford since 2001. I considered this, honestly, when it came up a few years ago when the town was first putting in the DPW director position, decided at that time probably wasn't a good fit. We were living in town. Obviously, we've since moved out of town. In the past, had kind of looked around, saw what was out there for other positions, and then when I saw this one come back before the first of the year, again crossed my mind. Just kind of waited, but then kind of came in last minute. Made the decision to apply, and, again, been in town. I think I, can maybe first couple of meetings with the guys, and Chris is gonna be on for a little bit still, and then, get a feel for what goes on and what the town looks for, what the board looks for, and, really hit the ground running here, so.
Great.
I'm, thankful for the opportunity and looking forward to it.
Thanks, Steve. I appreciate that. Any questions or comments?
I'm happy you lived here for so long. I didn't know that, so welcome.
Yeah.
And just thank you for applying. Your credentials are impressive, and I will take the advice of the committee that chose you.
Ms. Napoli?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So thank you for coming forward and applying for the job. Certainly, your knowledge of Littleton is going to be very helpful. I've heard really good things from you. People have come forward and approached me, and just couldn't say enough wonderful things about you. And again, I will defer to the committee as well. But I think this is a great. It's a great opportunity for you. It's also a great opportunity for the town of Littleton. Currently Chris Stoddard, he's been amazing for the town, certainly, and he will be definitely missed, but I think that you are a great fit to come in and be a successor, and we're really looking forward to working with you. Thank you.
Mr. Clevey?
Yeah, well, as Anthony noted, I had the privilege of representing the board on the interview committee, and I agree with everything Anthony said. We had a good candidate pool, and we were fortunate in that, but Steve Yonley stood out from that group, and while he uses no more words than are necessary to answer questions and such, which boggles my mind. I don't know how you can do that. He has all, he's credentialed, he's focused. I think he has the right character to serve the town, and I think he cares about the town. Doesn't live here anymore, but has, and that wasn't a specific qualification we were looking for, but I think it's an added benefit. Beyond that, he checked all the boxes, and people in Chelmsford think very highly of him. So I think we got a good one here.
Great. Yeah, I don't know much to add other than we went through a process, and by all accounts, you've risen to the top, and that's a testament to you and to your experience and to the way that you've demonstrated yourself professionally. So I'm excited to have you join our team, and just ask that. Well, I do like the fact that you're a Rhodes Scholar. I thought that's my favorite part of your resume. I'd entertain a motion from the clerk.
All righty. Find my, right here. Got it. All right. No, that's the fire chief one. Get us out of here.
Are you qualified?
Pays better, you might want to grab it.
I move that the select board vote to confirm the appointment by the town administrator of Mr. Stephen Yonley, is that correct?
Yep.
To the position of Public Works Director for the town of Littleton.
Second.
Motion been made by Mr. Nordhaus, second by Ms. Napoli. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. It's unanimous.
Welcome.
Welcome aboard, Steve. Congratulations. Make sure you wash those with the Purell when you leave.
There's a hand sanitizer by the door. Oh, look, there's some right here.
Not really. I want to live on the edge.
All right. Why did you have to recuse yourself? Didn't know that. Yeah, I guess you would then.
You look like Chris started too. So make it easy for us to.
I told him.
That's funny.
He was one of the candidates.
That's okay.
Named minute, said another word other than when's the interview. So I stayed out the whole
Yeah,
time.
good.
That's all I need.
These,
Do we get two sets?
I think she has another set after. She'll. for the
Oh,
next
okay,
day.
all right, okay.
oh, so
Pass those along.
these are the ones that, so the ones we may have had on our own, we don't,
No, this way you'll turn them back.
Oh, no, there's just one.
One set. That's
okay.
Thank you. I gave them.
Just cross off. The name is actually right.
Do we need one set or what are you saying, two? Just one set for each? One set for each of us?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
That's
Fine.
it.
I got one. I'm good.
I get next one. No,
Yeah, we're good.
you're good. Michelle, you want to know what? Good evening. You ready?
All right, so at this portion of our meeting, we've got interviews for we've got a couple of finalists for our fire chief. And first up, we have Mr. Robert Connor. Just thank you very much for coming before us. Thank you for having me. Absolutely. Just very basic. We're Just looking for you to give us a brief introduction, including experiences in and out of the fire service, and tell us about your understanding of this job, specifically how it relates to Littleton, and what makes you the most qualified person for this position.
Okay. So first and foremost, I'm a father and husband. I have 2 boys, age 6 and 7. Like most people with kids my age, I always struggle to find that balance between, work and family and home and all that. They do a pretty good job with that. Spend a lot of time outside. I like the outdoors. I'm a bit of a gearhead, so I like to. I have a '66 Chevelle at home. I have a '57 Chevy truck. I'm going to call it the She Chevy. I'm building it for my wife. So I like to stay pretty active. I try to set a good example for my kids. My wife the same way. We both work real hard, and we try to instill those kind of values, in the kids. As far as life experiences, I've been a little bit of here, there, and everywhere. I've traveled all over the country. I've met a lot of different people. I've always tried to put myself in somewhat uncomfortable situations because I think that's the best way to learn and grow, honestly. So as far as fire experience, that's also just as diverse. If you look at my resume, you see I moved around. Thank you very much. Okay, that's all right if you did.
He licked the whole rim, but he
We'll
didn't sip
share.
it.
Yeah, we'll share. So as far as fire experience, if you look at my resume, I've been a few places, but that's not necessarily because I was unhappy. Again, I look to grow. That's always been my mantra. So I've always been very close with the combination or volunteer fire departments. That's where I started. That's where my roots are. When I left Brookfield, I went to Oklahoma State and got my education there in fire protection and safety engineering, and then spent some time in Iraq. When I came back and got my paramedic, I went out to Northampton. And it wasn't that I was necessarily unhappy out there, but it just didn't feel right. I wasn't happy because it didn't feel right. So I made my way back out towards Central Mass into Rutland and Holden. The move from Rutland to Holden was very simple. They had growth opportunities. Rutland didn't. And I wanted that growth. And I worked there per diem, and I got in good with the guys, and I really liked the culture, so I went there. I was able to move up relatively fast in the ranks there over the last 9 years or so because of my strong work ethic, because I put in a lot into the job, and I put a lot into the people, and I put a lot into creating that unified fire department. It becomes difficult in this day and age. The volunteerism is sort of dwindling, so we really have to try to hang on to those people as best we can, and create an environment where it's safe for everyone. As far as being the fire chief here, I spent the last 22 years preparing for this opportunity, to be honest, and I've taken a lot of different steps to do that, from teaching at the Fire Academy, various programs, taking a lot of classes at the Fire Academy. My degree that I'm working on in industrial and organizational psychology, that is a leadership degree, and my intent with that is not to sort of put that down people's throats, as it were. It's to help. It's to help an organization. It's to help a town. It's to help places get over the obstacles that they might not be able to see, and move them forward into whatever the next thing is. The question that I ask is, what does the future need from us? That's a really important question to ask, and that's what I would seek to answer in Littleton, through the town administrator, through the chair, through the town, through the members of the fire department. That would be our goal, is to determine what does the future need from us and take steps to get there.
Excellent. Thank you for that.
Thank you.
Mr. Guidi, I believe you're up.
Yes, I am. All right. Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you as well, sir.
All right. We start off with questions that we agreed upon in advance, just to, and then I think we're allowed to freelance after that.
Fire away.
We'll go off the reservation.
That shouldn't scare you.
No, fire away.
Please describe your management leadership style, philosophy, and management experience. I know you've addressed some of that, but to the extent you want to elaborate, that's fine. How will you develop the mutual trust, respect, and cooperation of the employees? What, if any, adjustments would you make to address any conflicts with your leadership style?
So I think it's important to identify that management and leadership are two different things. Management is the mechanical nuts and bolts of what it is we're trying to do. It's working with the budget. It's making sure that the apparatus is what it needs to be as far as maintenance, as far as funding, working with the town and all that, creating those relationships with the town to make those managerial functions work. Leadership is a completely different thing. And there's all kinds of different leadership styles. If I were to put it into words, my leadership style is transformational and collaborative, because my idea of leadership is not to tell people how they should act or how they should be. It's to help them find that in themselves. I've done that in Holden. I've helped create relationships. I've helped people grow into positions that they want to be. In some cases, not in the fire department. And I believe that's a good thing, because we don't want somebody there if that's not really the right fit for them. And that person specifically is very happy now, and we fill the spot with somebody that actually wants to be there. And there's no bad blood there, because my intents are genuine. When I meet with someone, I don't have a cell phone in my hand. It's, you have my full attention, and I'm going to spend more time listening, actively listening, because I really want to know what people are saying. So that's the basis of my leadership style altogether. To pick one specific thing, I don't think that you can, because each individual that works in any organization is going to require maybe something different to motivate them. And motivation is important. So it's finding those things, it's getting to know people and finding those things, and using other people's motivations to help them succeed on their own. As far as conflicts go with my leadership style, adaptation is real important. As the fire chief, I'm not responsible for telling someone how they should feel or telling someone how they need to succeed. I'm responsible for determining what it is that motivates them, what it is that gets them to that next level. And I think that having a different approach to that, whether it's path goal, whether it's laissez-faire, whether it's, there's all kinds of different definitions for leadership, but the point is to be adaptable, and to understand that we're all just people, right? We all have needs, basic human needs, and we all have professional needs, and to find those in people and to bring those forward, to bring those out, to let people shine. That's fun. That's exciting stuff. And that's what I want to bring to Littleton, is that excitement that, we can bring it back. I think in the fire service in general, it's kind of waned a little bit. I've seen it, and it's there. We can bring it back.
One quick follow-up.
Sure.
Noticed on your resume you spent the summer of 2005 in Wasilla, Alaska.
That's true, yes.
Was the mayor, who I think it might have been back then,
I'm not sure who.
Sarah Palin, wasn't she mayor of Wasilla?
She was. She was. I didn't think of that, yeah. Yeah, I was there for an internship, and yeah, she was the mayor.
Okay.
Yeah, that's funny.
bet
You know
you
what,
could-
now
I
that
bet
you
you
say
could
it,
stories
I
to
might
tell.
have met her.
I would think so.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's all.
Cool.
Yeah. Thank you for that.
Clearly underwhelmed. All right, Matt.
See how carefully we read your resume.
Yeah, no, that's good, yeah. I'm glad.
Hello again.
Hello, sir.
So this is one I think we've already asked, but let's get it out there anyway.
Okay.
The management of the fire department requires a balance between management and labor rights. Can you describe your experience and approach to labor management relations and some successes and failures you may have had?
100%, yeah. So I was a union president for 4 years. A couple of the reasons that I took over as union president was because there was the full-time staff just wasn't quite going in the direction that I thought we should. I just thought there was more there. We were capable of more. We were capable of integrating into the community more. We were capable of having better attitudes, better morale, and I thought that the union would be a good place to bring that in, so I ran for union president and I got it. And a couple of things that we did. One, we had absolutely no budget at all whatsoever, and we didn't know where our money was going. We had 6 months of unpaid PFFM dues. We established a budget, which then after that we started gaining money, which was important for us. People didn't understand how that could happen before. The other thing we started doing was community integration programs. We got out in the community. We did T-shirts for Breast Cancer Awareness Month. That was a huge hit. We did a Christmas drive-through with Santa Claus where we did presents, and it was a ton of work. We did it a few years. This past year, we did pictures with Santa versus delivering them because of COVID and all that kind of stuff. So we really did we really got integrated into the community to the point where people would call and ask, is the fire department going to do this? And one of the greatest successes of that was we involved the call department. There was a lot of disdain between the call department and the full-time department due to different cultural values. And I mean, I could give you plenty of references that would say, yeah, we pulled that together. To the point that people who really didn't like the full-time side would start coming to us and asking questions and wanting to see what we were all about because they understood that just people, that we're on the same team. The other thing that we did was with labor relations, in the 15 years that we were a local, we had always negotiated with the town attorney, and it was always contentious. And one of my goals when I took over as that union president job was to get away from that. I said, we can do this without that. We can do this together because if we work collaboratively, if we work honestly, and we're transparent with each other, and we develop that relationship, then the negotiation goes easy, it goes simple. For the first time ever this past year, we did that. I was very proud of that. We worked it out with the chief. There were things that we disagreed upon. You're gonna have that, but because we established that relationship, and it took 4 years to do that, because we established that relationship, we were able to complete the negotiations to the point that the town attorney didn't have anything to give back and say, no, we can't do this, because we had already agreed to it. And that was important. The assistant town manager sat in on one of the first meetings and she said, what just happened? And I said, we can do better. We can do better. Just trust us a little bit and let us do this. And we did. As far as failures, I have a hard time defining failures because I view any failure or anything that we might not do as an opportunity for growth. So I was a part of 2 contracts. In the first contract, we did have to negotiate with the town attorney. They wouldn't go for it. Some might view that as a failure. I spent the next couple of years developing that relationship. And as the union president, I'm supposed to be on the union side, which I was. I definitely, represented the union body appropriately. But the union body would be best represented if I have a good working relationship with the fire chief and with the town, because that's the only way we're going to get anything accomplished.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Cindy, other today?
So this is question number 4. How do you encourage teamwork in the workplace? How do you encourage staff to promote teamwork throughout the organization?
So inclusiveness is important, and I think that as, the fire chief can be somebody that sits in the office, directs people what to do, and expect things to happen on their own. I think the best way to encourage teamwork is to be a part of that. So, you would see me out in the morning with the crew asking, how are you guys doing today? Guys, girls, what is it that you need? Is there anything you can do? Do you want to do some training today? But maybe let's do it together, And then things even outside of work. Earlier I was thinking something fun would be like Firehouse Fridays, where you might have a barbecue or something like that, where families and kids and all that are invited, the select board members, all that, to encourage all that. Because when it comes down to it, we're all a team. From the person who just got hired up to the chair of the select board and the town administrator, we're all trying to do something good for each other and good for the town. So that's how I would do it, just by being inclusive. And if you create that culture, you create that climate of inclusivity and motivation, and you give enough avenues for people to be involved, because one size doesn't fit all. So some people might not like the barbecue, that's fine. You work on something else, and you figure out what it is that motivates people, and you bring that together for common goals. And I don't think there's any other way to create teamwork.
Great, thank you.
Thank you.
Joe?
How are you?
Hello, sir.
Given the current climate and the hiring qualified firefighters and medics, what would you do to recruit and train career and call personnel?
So this is a big problem, right? And this is all over the state and country. There's this lack of people that are coming into the business. And one of the things that's real important in that is retaining quality people that we have right now, is creating an environment where people don't want to leave. And there's a lot of ways to do that outside of money. I think that one of the big things when we say we need to bring more people in or get people to stay, the first thing is always, well, give them a pay raise. That works for a little while, but it doesn't solve all of the problems. So my goal in Littleton is to put Littleton on the map as the premier fire department to work at. Not necessarily, hopefully to be paid well, but because of the environment that we would promote, because of the apparatus that we would have, because of the teamwork, Firehouse Fridays, possibly a spouse's auxiliary to start, some programs that don't necessarily cost anything, but bring people together. And another part that I think is real important is to actually have someone dedicated to training. And Deputy Chief Clancy brought this up, that he thinks that there needs to be somebody in prevention and then a captain on the management team. And I don't necessarily disagree with that. Prevention is very important, and it's a full-time job. And so is training, to be honest. And I know one of the things that we struggle with now in Holden is the personnel on the floor keeping up with training, as well as all the calls, as well as all the other tasks that we're saturated with. And the management has identified that, but we're too far down a path of organization at this point to change it, because it costs too much money. So establishing programs, establishing clear guidelines, coming up with ways to train people that they want to train, that's important. In the study that was done by the Collins Center in 2010, one of the things that was identified was adequate trainings, and trainings that people wanted to actually be a part of. So we need to know when and how staff want to train. Maybe they don't want to train on Monday nights. Maybe they want to do every other Saturday where we can get more people together. That's an easy change. But honestly, what we really need to do is find out what it is that people want. What does the staff want? And how does that work within the bounds of what we have available to us? That's what I would do.
Thanks.
Thank you.
I'm actually going to follow up to that.
Okay,
Just finish my note.
that's fine.
So you just mentioned kind of there's never enough money for everything that we want to do, right?
True story.
So you just mentioned that training, development of staff is expensive, and there's never enough money.
Right.
What are some things that maybe you've done in the past where you've been able to create training without having a huge financial impact, or what
Sure.
would you propose that we would do in order to make sure that that type of training and development of the staff is appropriate?
Sure. So I'd have to look. I'd have to get a good look at the budget. I'd have to see all those kind of things. But developing our own training props is a thing that we can have valuable training. I tell you this: a few years ago, I developed a program for rapid intervention, and we built a ramp that people would crawl up as part of this whole course, and after they would after they would go up the ramp, it was a tilt ramp, they would fall down into a foam pit, and we would put pressure on them. There was loud music playing and all that, and it didn't cost a lot. The props didn't cost a lot. To get a lot of people to the academy, to pay them for all that, might have been expensive, but the props didn't cost a lot, and we were able to use them over time. And that program turned into what became our rapid intervention protocols. So once we trained on it, it then became a part of our operation, and people really took to it. It wasn't long after that we actually had a firefighter fall from the second floor to the first floor, and the personnel did perfect. They did perfect. And I think it's because of that muscle memory, because we did train on that. Same thing with an SCBA course. One of the things that we don't do a lot is put on our SCBA, because we don't have as many fires as we used to. So it's important to develop these quick drills or things that you can do to use those skills that you might need that don't cost a lot of money. So, training prop development, I think, is real important. Company training during the day for crews is really important. That doesn't cost anything because we're already on duty. And we can come up with a whole list of company trainings that can be done on duty, that doesn't require any overtime, that as meaningful to the crews, especially if they're teaching it, they're learning it themselves. One of the things I like to do is have people develop their own training programs. I've done it, I know how to do it, I don't mind doing it, but boy, you really learn something when you take a hold of something yourself and own it and teach it, and you get passionate about it, then it starts building momentum, other people get passionate about it, and it saves a little bit of money.
Okay, thanks. The town of Littleton and the citizens want to be confident that the new fire chief is prepared and ready to manage a wide range of emergencies in different situations.
Sure.
Talk about your experience managing complex fire, EMS, hazardous materials situations.
Sure, yeah, so I've gotten, again, I have this kind of diverse background where I've been exposed to a lot of different things. When I was in Alaska, we had a different kind of environment up there. We did a ton of wrecks up there. For whatever reason, they wreck a lot in Alaska. And fires, too, in the summer. I did more fires in one summer than I did in like 2 years up in Alaska. And, those were in responder roles, but gaining that experience. Same thing, in Brookfield. I mean, we would go everywhere for fires. So, I've been to a ton of fires, a ton of motor vehicle accidents. Hazardous materials, I've done those and commanded those in Holden. We've had them. So I've been a part of those. I can recall quite a few significant motor vehicle accidents where the then call deputy chief would come to me and say, "Well, what do you think about this?" And I would give him what I thought, and he came to me because he trusted in the experience that I had, and that's what got me to be in the leadership role that I'm in there. Same thing with fires. For whatever reason, my group always seemed to catch fires when nobody was around, and we had minimal staffing. So you have to think on your feet. You have to use what you have available, and there's no excuses for not being prepared. So that it's really, and then anytime I haven't been able to get direct experience, I found some way to train. So we don't do a lot of fires anymore. It makes us a little bit lackadaisical sometimes with being able to identify dangerous fire situations. I started teaching flashover at the fire academy. So that gives me that, and that was from the outside and the inside, insight into when things are going to go bad. I have a little bit better insight into that. I took a whole, what would now be considered the hazmat course at the academy. I took that a bunch of years ago at Oklahoma State, and that was the equivalent of what would be the technician level hazardous materials training then, but it wasn't recognized by NFPA at the time, so it was an OSHA level certification. So, it's really, I've never been one for, war stories or anything like that. But, the things that I've seen and done in the areas, Iraq, for example, was chaos all the time. And we got it done. I was an officer there. I was in charge of, as a lieutenant, at 23 or 24 years old, 12 people that, when things started going poorly, they would look to me to say, what do we do? And somehow at that age, with that level of experience, I was able to calm them, look at them, and complete the job. So.
Can I follow up there?
Yeah, please.
In Holden, you're a captain?
Correct.
How many people are directly under you?
On a shift, anywhere between 5 and 6 for the day.
And that leads me to my next question. How many times would you be the first one on the scene that would take charge of the whole thing and set direction for everyone that would be working there?
Oh, pretty much every time, to be honest, yeah. I mean, during the day, administrative hours, the chiefs may or may not be there first. An example of this was a few weeks ago, I happened to be out doing an inspection, and we had a building fire. I was the first one there. I gave the size-up report. I started all the appropriate resources. The way that our staffing works, I then became operational in a mobile command capacity, very similar to how Littleton would sort of operate with limited staffing. But all the time, that was part of the reason why Holden went to captains for their shifts, because the chiefs didn't want to have to show up for everything. So to answer your question, it's just about every time.
Okay, thank you, Paul.
Okay, how will you ensure that the practices, procedures, and protocols of the fire department reflect best practices? Where will you go for your information?
So there's plenty of national standards for that. You know, NFPA 1500, the occupational safety standard for firefighters. I would definitely review that. I would, poll local chiefs as well. There's plenty of resources around for that. And my background is in industrial safety and occupational safety, so I'm very familiar with OSHA standards. I'm very familiar with the NFPA standards. So it becomes a risk assessment for the fire department, which is part of, ideally, there's 5 things that they call it the NIOSH 5, the things that I really want to keep track of is risk assessment, accountability, SOGs and SOPs, command, and there's one other one that's slipping me right now. But there's 5 things, and the idea behind the NIOSH 5 is that when those NIOSH 5 things align, as in they align and they don't exist, that's when bad things happen. So, like, one of the first things that I would want to do is get an idea of what kind of SOPs, SOGs we have, how dated they are, do they meet the current standards from a risk assessment point of view, and make sure that that NIOSH 5 is not in line, because that's when things happen. So that transcends, like, that's from the fire ground all the way up through management practice. So that's what I would rely upon is those things.
Okay. I have a follow-up. It's not directly related, but I have to find a place to work it in somewhere.
Go ahead.
So,
Sure. Feel free, sir.
Actually, I could use Selectman Knox's question as a segue relative to your position as a captain. Beyond the incident scenes, which Joe had spoken to, what are the responsibilities of the captain within the Holden Police Department?
Fire department.
Fire department. Yes,
Yeah.
right. Thank you.
Or are you working for the police department?
No, no. I took the red pill a long time ago, not the blue pill.
We almost hired the DPW director as the fire chief, so.
Yeah, so my responsibilities in the morning are, I coordinate the shift for the day. I make sure that everybody's going where they're supposed to be. I make sure that the apparatus it's good to go. I make sure that personnel have what they need to start the shift. If anybody has any questions, if there's a sick out, if there's this or that, that falls on me to figure out in the morning. And then I'm out doing inspections, so I give them something to do in the morning, and then I'm out doing inspections, usually for the better part of the morning. So there's a little bit of autonomy on their part to do the right thing, which thankfully my group usually does. After inspections, we all have lunch together. And then it's, some type of training in the afternoon, which again, I might make suggestions, but typically I ask, hey, what would you like to do today? And then come up with a plan, and then, all right, let's 2:00, let's do that. Other things I've been a part of, developing the training programs, looking at our ISO rating and trying to come up with ways to improve that. Some of the grants that we've had, although I didn't co-author them, I was lucky enough to proofread them, because we have a guy that writes grants, and he does such a great job. No, he won't let anybody else do it. But he trusts me and likes my writing style, so he lets me proofread them, which is really good. So our input matters. And then, we're sort of responsible for telling the chief, hey, listen, like, this isn't working, or it is working, or, they have, because the department's been growing, it took a little while for them to trust in the officer corps to say, like, okay, these guys know what they're doing. And I've gained that trust, so now I can make suggestions about operations that are taken seriously. Thank you.
All right, last one.
Oh, that's
And
it.
actually, you've largely answered this, but I'll ask it anyway. The fire service is a dangerous occupation and generates significant internal and external liability. How would you go about mitigating both safety and legal risks associated with providing the service?
Yeah, so without a doubt, I would look at, again, aligning those NFPA 1500 standards. One thing, though, that I really think gets overlooked. So right now, I'll start. 20 years ago, the thing that we really looked at after the cold storage fire was rapid intervention, right? That was like the big hot ticket that everybody did. And there was a ton of money put into it, and everybody did it. I did it. It was great. It's still great. The thing right now is cancer. That's the big hot ticket, right? Everybody's getting tested for cancer. We're washing our gear all the time. Everybody has 2 sets of gear, these kind of things. The next thing that we need to look at is psychological health, emotional health, and well-being. And to be honest, I think that's probably one of the best risk assessment strategies that we could take, is making sure that people are emotionally healthy and ready to work that way. Physically healthy, that's a different thing. And I do have a plan to bring that into Littleton. But that would be one of the things, on top of the things that I've already said. Aside of all that is just making sure that people are safe emotionally, that we have a place that people feel comfortable coming in and saying, you know what, I had a bad day, or this call was terrible, or because I don't want that one situation to lead to a bad decision next time. That might not be somebody's fault. It might not be that they're a bad person or that they don't know what they're doing. It might just be that we didn't recognize that there was a problem. So that recognition, early recognition, super, super important. Something that the officers, I think, need to really take a part in overall, just to build that. I think that would be a good thing.
To follow up on that, everyone we interviewed, when asked, can you tell us about a difficult problem you had, everyone said, I had a coworker who became unhinged, was having a really hard time, had a dependency issue,
Right.
and this is what happened as a result. And some of them had happy endings, and many of them didn't.
Right.
But I just want to echo that, because I do think it was, to me, like as a civilian, obviously, like seeing that from everybody really opened my eyes. And I think people have been talking about it, for the police department, certainly. But I
Right.
think that it's probably, we can't ignore it.
It's the next thing, mark my words, in 10
Yeah,
years.
no, I think
Holden Light's
that's-
gonna be going to that.
That's a good,
You know,
I think you have a good, you're right, yeah.
Yeah, thank you.
I'm gonna offer a follow-up as well
Sure.
to that question. Because you tipped your hand a little bit.
Uh-oh.
We've got great representation by our members here tonight.
Fantastic.
And you mentioned that you have a plan from a physical health plan. I mean, certainly.
Right.
Cancer screening is something that I think is important
Yeah.
for us to recognize
Yeah.
on behalf of the membership. But emotional, certainly,
Yeah.
mental health is huge. But you kind of teed up a little bit that you have some sort of a plan for the physical. Can you just,
A little bit.
without a whole lot of detail, just give us a kind of an overview of what you're thinking.
So one of the things I'd like to do is run the Littleton Triathlon. That's coming up in July. It's coming
Appleman?
back this year. Appleman, yeah. And I'm not necessarily what people might consider a triathlete. I'm not. However,
See, people look at me and they automatically say Chuck's a triathlete.
right. And I thought that too. So first thing when I walked in, no doubt about
You're
it.
already, it's because
Yeah.
you have the streamlined head for the swimming.
You don't need
Is this
you don't
gonna be a
need
training exercise
You don't need
for
a swim
EMS,
cap.
or-
I'm sorry. So, and this is an obscure reference, but have you all seen the movie Gung Ho with Michael Keaton?
Yeah.
Okay, so they start in that movie, one of the things they do is they start their day, the workers in the other country, doing yoga, right? Something that a fire department would never think of. And I'm not necessarily saying that that's what we would do, but something.
I'm looking for feedback.
Something to bring people together, right? And I think after action reviews are also pretty important too, just to talk with people. It's something that I think often gets overlooked because we're all so busy. So if there is a bad call or something like that, like we just don't necessarily talk about it anywhere. So that's important. But I developed a program in Holden. It was a physical fitness challenge, and there was a prize at the end of it, and included everybody, including the call force. And it was a 3-month thing where whoever lost the most weight, in that case, got a prize. And that actually took off. It joined some people together, and it was a lot to keep up with, so it never happened again. But we tried. The point is, we tried. So again, we have to find the things that people are going to want to do. So maybe they don't want to do yoga, but maybe there's somebody that really likes weightlifting, right? So maybe we have a weightlifting clinic for people, and education. So if we start not necessarily bombarding people, but if we start really bringing to the forefront how and why we need to be physically and emotionally fit, it'll catch on. It will, especially if the fire chief is running a triathlon when he shouldn't be, You know, and trying, because that's all that matters. So that supportive kind of network, again, without getting into too much detail.
I appreciate it. Great. Any other follow-ups or any other questions from the members?
Nope.
Mr. Knox, you good?
You sure? Because I'm still ready.
Do you have any questions of us?
You know, I don't. I know that I should, but
No,
this process has been so transparent and comprehensive that all my questions thus far have really been answered. So I want to thank the board and town administrator for having me tonight. I really appreciate it. It's an honor to speak
Likewise.
for you.
Yeah, thanks for coming
So
in.
thank you very much.
We appreciate it as well. Good luck.
I'll
Thank
take
you.
this with me.
One for the road.
Thank you.
You bet, thank you. Michelle, maybe just give us 2 minutes just to kind of decompress a little bit. Is that all right? Aren't you running this parade?
Can I just speak to one thing, not about the particular candidate, but about the process?
Yeah.
Okay. I think the questions are great and good jumping off point. And Anthony knows I raised the point I'm about to make during the DPW interview. The grading on it.
We can't hear you.
Oh, I'm sorry. The grading on it
Guys.
while I did it. I feel uncomfortable doing it because I don't necessarily, in my own mind, think all of these questions are equal in their importance. So if you grade them all on a 1 to 9 scale, and one question is more important,
point.
and there's other factors like stuff that comes out in the resume or other places that don't neatly fit in here.
So I'll say this about this type of a rating system. I would be able to, I think we can defend if we have somebody that comes out with, what are there, 8 questions and potential for 9 points. If somebody comes out with, say, 64 and somebody comes out with 58, but we weight questions differently and we make arguments, and frankly, each one of us may weight questions differently. So I think that the deliberation after this, it's a good jumping off point, I guess, is the
Yeah,
best way
I
to put it.
just think a way to avoid that is have the same questions without the numbers.
So I actually, I wasn't even going to use the numbers as a
Okay.
gauge. I was going to like, oh, why did I say that one was this number? Oh, yeah, that's right, because he said this.
Yeah.
Like, I think it's a good way to remember what you know, go back through the interview.
Right, I mean, I was putting more time into taking notes.
Yeah, me too.
Agreed, yeah.
I don't think
Yeah.
that the numbers are anything more
I
than
agree
a
with you.
guide for us to.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I tried to fit into that box, but I don't fit into that box very
Yeah,
well.
okay.
so
I just
agree
wanted
with
to
you.
get on record
Nope,
on
nope.
that.
I agree with you, and we're on camera, so we're,
Okay.
hey, Gary? Gary? Anybody want
Is
water?
Graham here? No, I'm good.
I believe he's here.
Okay.
Anybody else? Joe?
I'm good. Thank you.
Want water?
Might as well.
Gary only has 2 hands? Otherwise, he's a freak. Speaks very well.
Yes, he's
Studying to be. Right?
Right?
Studying to be?
By the select board.
suck up.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ed.
I'm good, thanks, Ed.
Hey, is Graham here? Is he coming down? Okay, are you ready, Mr. Chair?
Do we need other?
No, I just
forms?
wanted us to be able to have that little comment, just for us to be able to, if we want to tighten up our notes or that kind of thing, just to be
We are gonna
prepared.
need another,
Michelle, do you have our next set of,
like she's on top. Very good. Did you grab that accelerated Alaska thing there, huh?
I loved it. You could have held a gun to my head and asked me where she was my answer.
Sorry, I'll just
And
take
the
the
time
same one. I don't know another one, but thank you.
I think she was like
I'm
elected
good.
governor in 2006.
Leave it to you. Honest to God.
Irrelevant trivia. I'm all over.
I know,
If you
right?
didn't hear it the first time, here it comes again.
You want me to record that and make a little video of it?
A little TikTok.
Video, you just have to change the name.
Oh, Okay.
And it wasn't Michelle that did this.
You know what? I think I already have one of these because, didn't I? No, I didn't.
What? That was just,
Wise, sir, very wise.
if by wise you mean like wisdom, that kind of wise, or just like wise ass? Like a wise guy.
You said it, not
I did. We're on camera.
Oh, yeah.
Whoops.
Keep on forgetting.
All right, so Michelle, if you want to let Caitlin know, we're good. We're ready. Is it the green room or the blue room?
Do we know if he's
Beige room.
I think he put in there that he was,
he served in Iraq,
but in a.
As a contractor.
As a contractor.
Yeah, and they had rank, but
Yeah, no, because I didn't see it in the resume. Okay.
One on his second masters.
Yeah, yeah.
no idea.
Liked him.
Yeah. Yeah, he kind of, well, we'll get into it. But
Yeah.
doesn't have much to
I
do
don't want
with
to say
management.
because
No,
I don't want to prejudice.
I haven't. No, that's why I haven't asked you guys.
Yeah.
Like,
No.
Right.
handicap it for me. I'd rather go in open-minded.
Good. Yeah, he's an impressive guy.
Yeah. It's pretty warm. 73. Is that so?
73,
Is
yeah.
that so they sweat?
I don't know.
Because I'm starting. I'm not sweating yet, but I know my ears are getting red. I can feel them. Yeah, maybe just stay in the front row just 1 second. Yep. Thank you. I assume that's Graham, right?
Yeah.
Someone I don't recognize that walked in
That's
with a
him.
water bottle and a
Yeah.
suit.
Yep, that's it.
All right, you good? All right, Graham, come on forward. Yeah, so folks, the next candidate we have as a, one of our finalists for our fire chief is Graham Rowe. Graham, thank you very much for coming.
Thank you.
Appreciate you being here and going through this process with us. Just ask that you give us a brief introduction, introduce us to you. Please include experience in and out of the fire service, and tell us about your understanding of this particular job, this fire chief job here in Littleton, and specifically how it relates to Littleton, and what makes you the best qualified candidate for this position.
Sure. That was a lot. My name is Graham Rowe. I'm 42 years old. I've been in the fire service for about 20 years. I did a couple of on-call departments up in New Hampshire. I also did one in Groveland, Massachusetts, before I ended up getting on to North Andover. Been in North Andover since 2004. Went as a firefighter, EMT, until about 2012 when I got promoted to lieutenant. Got promoted to lieutenant, was assigned an ambulance and an engine before I transferred to headquarters to oversee an ambulance, a ladder, and an engine. Did that for about 4 years before I went through the assessment process to become a deputy chief. Was selected to become the deputy chief of the fire department. Started working, originally it started as a training officer, but of course everything kind of builds upon that, and it moved from training to administration to IT to human resources to a little bit of everything. So it's been a growing experience. I'm married. I have 2 children. Been in North Andover my entire life. Graduated from North Andover High School, have a degree from North Shore Community College. Some of the experiences that I've had that have led me to this career path inside have been trainings. I'm working a lot alongside of some great influences in my life. I've had one I can speak of. He's retired, Dan Glenn. He actually passed away not too long ago. He had 42 years in the fire service. The guy was absolutely fantastic. Sat down with me every night, ran me through pump drills where we watched people walk up and down the street. So he gave me a real passion for the job because he had that. He took the time to sit with me. Some of the other experience that I have For leadership, I oversee, I'm the Deputy Incident Commander for the Boston Athletic Association Boston Marathon Finish Line Sweep Team. I oversee about 270 medical volunteers in the secure area of the finish line right in Boston. We run 22 zones, 22 task forces, and handle anything emergency related for the runners. I was also an assistant commander of NEMLEC, the STARS unit, the School Threat Assessment and Response System. I did that for about 4 years. I was the first non-police personnel to ever be promoted to an assistant commander position to oversee a police unit. We started originally with bomb threats, shooting, stabbings, threat assessments for anything that would come towards a school. And we worked our way over towards murders, suicides, and grief counseling. We started up a counseling team that would go out and respond to those calls. Those are just some of the things that I've had for leadership experience inside and outside. Some of the other things that I've had, I was a police officer for about 4 years, the city of Methuen. I did that part-time, so that gave me a perspective of the other public safety points of view, which kind of made me a little bit more well-rounded because I could understand what the police were looking for, not only that, but what also the fire department is looking for on scene. So that was very beneficial. What I know about Littleton, I've spoken with a few chiefs that I've gone through schools with and classes and so forth, and some other firefighters in neighboring departments. And one of the great things that they've said about this department is it's progressive. The community is phenomenal. The fire department, the members are dedicated to what they're doing. And this also aligns with I ended up reading the study that was done in 2010 and then the 2016 study on the fire department in the town, and that was one of the things that they were looking for, moving forward and being progressive, and that was very good. I enjoyed that. That's something that I'm passionate about and moving forward. So that's another reason why I'm choosing Littleton, and hopefully you'll choose me to come to Littleton. But the community itself is growing. I think when we talked during the interview, there's a perspective of a 30% growth in the next 5 years, I believe it is, for the community, hopefully. That'd be nice. With some of the projects that might be coming into town.
In revenue, hopefully.
Yeah. But with that growth, I can see the fire department growing because it has since 2010 to 2016 to 2022. You guys have made leaps and bounds of, going ALS. ALS is huge. Putting on full-time, doing 24 hours. And I can see that they want to move forward, and that's something that I'm excited about and passionate about because I do have a little bit of time left. I've got 15 years minimum until I can retire. So I'm looking at a long term to be able to put those 5, 10, 15-year goals ahead. Are you looking for some fire experience, like running scenes, things along those lines?
I think you've answered it pretty well to this point.
All right, fantastic.
I think the series of questions that we're going to grill you with henceforth will bring out additional.
Tried to throw a lot at you.
No, that was good. That was a nice snippet, and I think it gave us all a good glimpse.
Fantastic.
That supported your resume nicely.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Yeah, thank you. Mr. Gliddy.
Yeah. Hello, Graham. Nice to
Hello,
meet you.
nice to meet you.
Please describe your management leadership style, philosophy, and management experience. How will you develop mutual trust, respect, and cooperation of the employees? What, if any, adjustments would you make to address any conflicts with your leadership style?
Leadership is very fluid. There's certain situations that you have to be very assertive, and this is what's going to happen, this is how it's going to happen, because they have to be split-second decisions. The great thing about it is I've learned from quite a few chiefs in the past and leaders in the past, and taking a little bit of every single one that I've met kind of helps you develop the ability to adapt easier. I believe in transparency. I believe in, it's not my budget, it's the department's budget. They have been here. I'm an outsider, so one of the great things that I want to do is sit down with them because they have goals and aspirations of what they see the department. So managing that way, being there, yes, the buck stops with me, and I know that I have to take accountability of anything that goes wrong, but I also want some kind of help along the way because it is also their department, not mine. There are times that you're going to have to put your foot down. On a fire scene, you're going to have to put your foot down. If there's a violation of the contract, you're going to have to put your foot down. I'm held accountable, and everybody else should be held accountable. But if there's that mutual trust between everybody knowing that it's what's best for the community, what's best for the department, what's best for the members of the department, so everybody has to play an active role in that. So going back and forth with them and figuring out what the problems are, what works well, because in the 2016 study, you guys did a great SWOT analysis of what they needed, what the weaknesses were, which was great, because now we have grounds to work on and move forward. I'm not saying anything's wrong with the department, but there probably are things that they want to improve on. So the management style that I'm going to most likely live with is fluid. I want to make sure that they're involved in the processes to build that mutual trust. I'm hands-on. I like to be involved in things. I like to go out on calls. Some people will tell me I'm crazy, but I really enjoy the ambulance. Some people, I enjoy going out and doing the trainings. I like getting my hands dirty because things change, and if I sit behind a desk all the time, yes, I'm looking at the future and looking at things, but they're not going to build a trust with me because I'm just going to be sitting back there and not showing what my skills are, knowing what their skills are, and how I can either complement them or they can complement me. So for a leadership style, like I said, it's going to be very fluid because I want to get to know everybody there. I want to know what their strengths, their weaknesses are before I can go in. If we have issues, the great thing about talking about it first, yes, like I said earlier, the buck stops with me. I have full accountability. I'm the head of the department, so it would come back on me. But I want to be able to empower them to make those decisions. I shouldn't have to stand over somebody and say, I need a line to the second floor, I need that window laddered. I should say, listen, give them a task and make sure that they have the ability to accomplish that task without micromanaging them. I don't believe in micromanagement.
Thank you.
Hi.
Welcome back.
Great, thank you.
The management of the fire department requires a fine balance between management and labor rights. Can you describe your experience and approach to labor management relations and any successes and failures in that area?
Yes. One of the past chiefs that I've worked for always taught me to have the open conversation before it starts moving on to the next process. What's the reason why there's a grievance? What the reason there might be an issue with what's something that's going on? I believe that's true. I believe that you should sit down and talk things through before you actually move forward. But if there's like a violation of the contract, people should be held accountable, whether it's my office or whether it's one of the members. They should be held accountable to the contract. Labor negotiations going back and forth, there are certain things, being on both sides, being in the union and being part of the union, and to being also on the manager side, it was tough at first to separate. Because you know what you're fighting for, but if everybody's fighting for the common goal and being able to see that, we're not going to get everything we want. There's going to have to be give and take on each side to be able to accomplish what you need to accomplish. Some things I've learned from my doing negotiations in the past, it takes time. You can't have everything at once. You pick up the priorities, just like most of you have gone through contract negotiations. You sit there and you lay down 5 things. You may only get 3, but you start with those 5, and at least those other 2 that you didn't get are on the agenda for next time or something to strive for. I've had success working with the union, being a member, being involved when I was a firefighter and a lieutenant. I had great relationship with the union, so I was able to have those open communications with them. I can honestly say, knock on wood, in 5 years that I've been deputy going on 6, I haven't had a grievance against me. That's a bonus.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Great. Thank you. So this is question number 4.
Of course.
How do you encourage teamwork in the workplace? How do you encourage staff to promote teamwork throughout the organization?
To promote teamwork in the organization, you have to have buy-in. They have to have pride in the job, pride in what they're doing, and pride in where they're going. If you have an organization that's stale, people show up and it's, yep, I'm here, all right, great, I got another shift. Of course, there's not going to be a lot of teamwork. Getting everybody involved, hands-on, and doing certain things that they want to learn, that they want to, move out towards the community. There's a lot that you can learn in the fire service. There's a lot you can train in the fire service. Training is big because we always train for these events that we hope that never happen, and they're far and few between. Fires, it's statistically down. So building some kind of teamwork around training. What do the guys want to learn? Well, got men and women, what do they want to learn? What do they want to do? If they have buy-in that management is fighting for the best for the department and best for them, buy-in that they enjoy coming to work because they're appreciated. Sitting down and getting, one of the biggest things that we're actually working on now in the community I come from is police and fire. Of course, there's always that battle. We're going back and forth, determining whether it's going to be a softball or that axe throwing, which is going to be quite interesting. But that builds teamwork. It also doesn't just build teamwork along the fire department, it builds it between agencies, which is something that we truly need because we rely on each other. So being able to build that teamwork and find out what drives them, because I know what drives me. I care a lot about this. I'm very passionate about the fire service, so I know what drives me and what I want to accomplish. So you have to find out what that is with them. Is it something that they want more community involvement? Is it something they want, more training, more hands-on? Is it something that they want me out there more often, or whichever chief you choose out there more often? You got to find what drives them to build that teamwork.
Great, thank you.
Actually, let me, if I may, follow up with that. So I think it's critical to find out what drives membership, but you mentioned a couple times in that answer that what drives you. Just share with us a little bit about what drives you. You said you're passionate about fire service.
I'm passionate about the fire service. I love where we're going. I love, when I first got on, there was that incredible brotherhood. Like, we were very close-knit. Everybody was involved in community. Everybody was going out and hanging out and, getting to know everybody's family. It's the stuff that you saw in movies, and I can honestly attest that it was true when I first got on the department. Over the years, because of schedules and different generations coming in, that kind of falls back. I'm passionate on learning. This is one of the fields that are out there that's dynamic. It changes every day. One thing you might learn about putting out a fire, a week later, there's a report saying, oh no, this works much better. I enjoy learning that. I enjoy being part of the community. I enjoy still having that childhood look of, oh, he's a fireman. Things along those lines. This is something I wake up and I look forward to do. Actually, when I became a deputy chief was the first time I found out 2 of my great-grandfathers were chiefs. I had never known that until I became one. I didn't think anybody else in my family was a firefighter, but it was kind of one of those that, wow, that gave you that little extra boost. Hey, it's in my blood, and that's why I'm probably so passionate about it.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
On to question 5. Given the current climate in hiring qualified firefighters and medics, what would you do to recruit and train career and call personnel?
Recruiting and retainment, this is something that's been coming across the board nationwide. Recruitment is down. Basically, the reason that it's down is because jobs, a lot of people are working other jobs. They don't have the time. Originally, when call departments started, everybody lived in the community that they lived in. Now they have to kind of outsource and go a little bit further out. When I was on Groveland, I can speak that I was in Groveland. I lived in Groveland. Everybody lived in Groveland. But then over the time, you saw everybody kind of moving out and going to work, and there was no industry within those communities anymore. So recruitment and retainment is a little bit, it's one of those that the call and combination departments are running into the issues. There's a couple different ways you can do it. One, you can get more involved in the schools. I see that there was an Explorer program here. You can get more involved in the schools, start seeing that. We're lucky enough to have Neshoba Valley in this area, so you'll have a regional school. Reach out to other communities and talk with the other combination departments or other call departments. How are you doing it? Can we share some of these assets? Even though it's a little tough to share an asset, especially with a neighboring community, but that's what ended up happening up on the North Shore. There were members on Groveland, Georgetown, Boxford, and they kind of shared assets because we were limited. Getting into the schools, like the colleges, especially the paramedic programs, getting in and seeing if you can do a ride, a preceptor program. Just trying to get people more involved. I know with COVID, a lot of people were a little nervous jumping on board because we provide an EMS service, which means we're going to be exposed to it a lot more often than others. So kind of putting out that information of, this is how we can stay safe, still come down and take a look. Maybe you can join the fire department, learn about EMS, take those negative connotations away of not being exposed all the time to a certain thing, and kind of show them that it's okay to be able to keep coming back to the fire department and join. But most likely you'll end up having to go into schools. That's the easiest way that you're going to be able to get people more involved, get out community, and try to recruit people.
All right, citizens of Littleton want to be confident that the new fire chief is able to manage a wide variety of emergency situations. Talk about your experience managing complex fire, EMS, and hazardous materials situations.
I've had a few over the years. One of the things, like when I told you in 2012 when I became a lieutenant, we did not have a deputy. We didn't have a deputy at that time, and I was stationed mostly out of headquarters. The lieutenant that was stationed out of headquarters was the incident commander. Our chief, at that time, we didn't see much of him. He was kind of doing his own thing, so he let us run the department pretty much. So we had a lot of little calls. I wouldn't say little, but a lot of calls like fire. We had chimney fires, we had house fires, and we were the incident commanders, the lieutenants that were on scene. So not only were you trying to run your crew, you were running the actual scene itself. As we started progressing a little bit further and I became deputy, of course I started to go to more and more calls because I'm a Monday through Friday on call 24/7. So I started going to a lot more. The great thing about doing it Monday through Friday and being on call 24/7 is you get a lot of experience, not only just hands-on, but other communities, because I got to respond to other communities to assist them. With us, I can speak of a couple different situations, starting from a small fire all the way up to a couple big ones, hazardous materials, like you said. We'll start with an EMS. We had a motor vehicle accident on the highway 495, and I believe it was a tractor trailer and about 4 or 5 cars. Getting up on scene, we share that section of highway with Lawrence. So getting up there and having multiple agencies up there, you have the state police, you have Lawrence Police, you have North Andover Police, Lawrence Fire, and Lawrence loves to send everybody and anybody they have. I think they sent about 6 trucks. We sent about 3. We had to call Lawrence General for backup ambulances because we needed more ambulances. I want to say it wasn't a large MCI, but it was an MCI. We had about, I think, 6 or 7 victims that we had to attend to. Being able to sit back and watch and put certain people in positions and be able to say, all right, I need this, I need this, I need to make sure that the truck's not leaking, I need to make sure that we have ambulances on the way. Is the state police able to make sure that we can get off this highway? And running all those all those questions through my head so I could make sure that this situation was going to be safe. Recently, we had about 900 gallons of oil. We had a tanker truck roll over in a residential neighborhood right next to a marsh. We had all of our trucks responding out there. The update that we got was just a truck on its side. When we got there, it was a river of oil going down the street. It looked like a water line had broken, and it was racing down the street and going right directly into the pond or the marsh that was right there. Well, as everybody knows, we only have a certain amount of booms, we only have a certain amount of things on the truck, so you have to improvise. So one of the quickest things, I looked at one of the gentlemen that was on the department with me, and I said, I need you to grab shovels, because the best thing that we could do is, at that point, start shoveling the side of the road and throwing as much sand as we could to try to dam this up, and it wouldn't continue to leak into this marsh, which mitigated the situation. It was a fantastic. The gentleman that I asked to grab all the shovels, he came back. I don't even know where he got all these shovels, but the crews did an amazing job, and we stopped a lot of that from getting in. We still had a lot that got into the water, but it could have been a lot worse. I can say one of the biggest incidents that I had was in 2018, where most likely this department actually joined me in that venture, was the Columbia gas explosions. My chief at the time was a very lucky man, and he was in Jamaica. I was at the firehouse, and it was about 4 o'clock. I was finishing up an inspection with my fire prevention officer, and the first call came in. It came in for smoke in the basement, which a lot of us on the fire service smoke in the basement. You think it might just be a delayed ignition, something along those lines. But of course, we respond as we normally do. And as I was responding there, my fire prevention officer was responding there. A call for a house with the smell of gas in it came in. So I had him divert off and go. And just as I was pulling up on scene, we get another call about, I don't know, 5 blocks over for a fire in a basement. So I divert off of the first call and start heading that way and head with the ambulance to go assess that. At that point, I could see the calls coming in. Our radio was starting to get more and more. So that's when we realized that we had something that was a little bit more than we expected. At that point, it was baptism by fire. I'd been a deputy for 2 years. This was the largest event that, as some have described, the nation has ever seen. I ended up responding to a parking lot meeting up with the PD, setting up a command post, because at this point we needed an all-call. We needed everybody back. We needed as many hands on deck as we could. When I got to the command post, we realized that Lawrence and Andover were in the same boat. They had already exhausted their 10-alarm card. Our 10-alarm card was pretty much exhausted because we share all the same resources, so this turned into grab me whoever you could. So my dispatcher, who was actually from southern New Hampshire, reached out to southern New Hampshire. We had trucks from the U.S. Navy. We had trucks from Manchester, New Hampshire, responding to our community. One of the biggest things that we had, the biggest issue that we had, in my eyes, communication was a big issue, but the biggest thing is we had a hard time with air. With our SCBAs that are on our back, you can only fill so many at a time, and we had no one to go to the station to fill those. So reaching out to communities to try to get an air supply unit to come down, reaching out to MEMA, working with, I believe the director of the fire academy was with me. There was a major with the state police there. We had the deputy fire marshal was in North Andover at that time. We ended up calling. I had a lieutenant come down. I briefed him. I sat with him for a few minutes, kind of gave him a quick rundown, and I said, I have to transfer operations over to you because this has turned into a larger event, and I need to go over to Lawrence, because Lawrence is where the command center was and the staging for all the trucks were. Getting over to Lawrence and working with all those agencies, being able to see what assets we had, and basically, as I put it, and I explained it to the guys did all the work. The men and women of the fire departments, they did all the work. I stood there, yes, and I orchestrated everything that I could, got them every asset that I could, and managed the incident to the best of my ability, but they were the ones that were hands down doing the work. They were the ones that went from call to call, leaving equipment because they needed to get to the next house. They would call me for that equipment, and I would get it to them as best as I could, working on the strategies while I worked with one of my lieutenants doing the tactics. We were in close communication, and I would say, listen, this is what I need you to do. We need to work on this. And luckily, North Andover at that time, no deaths, 1 minor injury. I believe we had 11 structure fires, 22 burner fires, 4 multiple alarm fires. Within the first 8 hours, we had 120 calls come in. And we handled it very well. So, it was a little overwhelming.
I'm sure.
All right.
Okay. Melissa won't be prompt as dramatic an answer. But that was a very compelling story, didn't it, G? How will you ensure the practices, procedures, and protocols of the fire department reflect best practices? Where will you go for your information?
There's a couple different places that you can go for best practices. One, NFPA standards. That's one of the best places that you can get. Not everybody can be NFPA compliant. That's something that we always strive for. But that's where you can get some of the best practices. The academy has best practices. Being able to, they're willing to share whatever information that they have. You want a PowerPoint based on their type of training, you make a phone call, they'll gladly give it to you. So at least it's consistent being able to put out that information. There are a lot of companies out there that practice best practices, because a lot of the companies, the reputable ones, we actually have one coming in the community that I'm in, out of FDNY. They're going to come in and teach us man versus machine, because the town is receiving a 4.3 million square foot Amazon building. So there's going to be a lot of machines in there. they're very reputable because there's a lot of liability on it. So doing your research with companies like that and bringing them in that are subject matter experts, that's one of the best ways to make sure that everybody is doing the best practices. There's also other companies out there. I don't know if you've ever heard of Lexipol. Lexipol is a company that does SOPs and SOGs and also trainings. They basically take information from across the country, make sure that it's best practice mixed with state and federal law, and also take in your collective bargaining agreement to make sure that everybody's on the same page, and they will come out with trainings or SOPs or guidelines on how to do procedures and policy. So being able to incorporate something like that to make sure that everybody is on the same page and no one's going to get tied up in doing something wrong. Because with today's society being so litigious out there, you want to make sure that everybody is covered and they're doing the right thing, not only for themselves, but for their families and for the community.
All right, here's the last one. The fire service is obviously a dangerous profession and generates a significant amount of internal and external liability. How could you mitigate both safety and legal risks associated with providing a fire service?
One of the things, like I just mentioned, was Lexipol. Lexipol, the great thing about that company or those guidelines that they produce, they're not only based on best practice state and federal law, they have an entire legal team that helps draft those and meets with you specifically for your department. And the reason that they meet with your department is to make sure that everything falls based on what you're currently doing, what the town, if they have any bylaws towards something. It's one way that if they follow those guidelines and that they're defendable, that they're doing the right thing and they're not going above and beyond their scope of practice. That's one of the best things that I can say for a department to have, strong SOPs, SOGs, and holding people accountable for those. They have to be held accountable to them because if you venture outside them, you have no safety. The internal and external part of the fire service, actually fighting it dangerous, is not only the physical danger that you're up against, there's the emotional danger that you're up against. And by me saying that is we see things that people don't usually say. The fire service sees that. That's something that it's inherent that you're going to come across that. We're called for good days for people that might just need something small from us, like fire alarms, but we're also called out for car accidents. We're called out for suicides. We're called out for fires on those worst days. That's more of if you look statistically, that's a higher issue than fighting fires. If you train, you stay consistent, you follow your SOPs and SOGs, and do the best that you can with this, and make sure that you have the right resources on scene, you do well on a fire ground. It's just that aftermath that you have to worry about, those pictures or those snapshots that you keep in the back of your mind. So you're going to have to kind of look on both sides of that and how do you mitigate that? You talk with them. There are teams out there. There's CISM teams that are out there. There's peer support networks that are out there that will be able to help out with that. Fireground, there are things on the fireground that you can do. You can bring in those experts to train to make sure that people are safe and that they're following that consistent pattern to be able to make sure that they can get through an incident.
I said this before, which is to the first candidate. Every single interview we had when we asked a candidate what the greatest difficulty they had or a very difficult situation, it was a coworker who was having a hard time emotionally,
Yes.
mentally, dependence issues. I think you're right.
Yeah, thank you.
That's all.
Any other follow-ups or any other questions?
No.
Graham, do you have any questions of us?
No, I asked a couple questions during the selection. One of the biggest questions, and I was answered very well, was where does a town see the fire department going in the future? Where do they see it expanding? Do they see the skills changing? Where do they see the department going? It's a tough question.
It is a tough question. It's really a tough question for us as we're volunteers that,
Yeah.
we try to wear a lot of hats up here, and would certainly be better suited to have the folks that are sitting behind you answer that question. But I think that we do pride ourselves on that we do have a professional fire department. We do have a qualified and trained membership. We did recently transfer to ALS in the last few years. We've expanded our membership pretty significantly and gone to 24-hour service. I think that we're going to continue to grow in that vein. I think that with the town's growth, I hope it's 30%.
Me too.
At least from a revenue standpoint. But with that, I think, everything's relative, right? So if there's more needs, and we anticipate more calls, there's going to be additional needs for public safety. So I think it would be in line with what we see and what we identify the needs as. So, I mean, we're faced with everything from the budget
Yes.
to making sure that, that we're addressing the physical as well as the emotional needs of all of our employees. And certainly, there's different needs that come in public safety, and certainly with the fire service, whether it be cancer screening or whatever it happens to be. So, I don't think I'm qualified to answer that question fully.
Yeah.
But that's kind of an overview, and I'm happy to welcome my colleagues to
That's a good
piggyback on it.
Touched on the key points.
Yeah. I was in the past when I first started reaching out about, this job in the community, because I want to make sure that it's a perfect fit for me and I'm a perfect fit for you. So I wanted to make sure that, I started looking back and meeting some people, and one of the things that I found out, and pretty much the consensus was, the community is amazing. The people of the community are very supportive of everything that happens here. And that also the department, they're well respected. They're moving forward. They're eager to be progressive. And those are two key points that I know I took home and I kind of agree with.
Great. Excellent. All right. Well, we've got a little bit of work ahead of us. We very much appreciate you coming out.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Nice to see you
Thanks for
again.
going through this process with us.
I appreciate it. Thank you very
Wish
much.
you nothing but the best.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Nice seeing you. Nice to see you again.
Wish you the best.
One trip.
Yeah, good luck, yeah.
Nice to meet you. Thank you.
Just take a couple minutes,
Yeah,
formulate your thoughts.
yeah.
Try to do some math here. Folks, this is kind of not exactly must-see TV. We're just trying to gather our thoughts and before we get into some deliberation, so
I think we should give our
be
opinion.
patient, please.
The point is that the two Fridays when Graham left the room, the first thing they said, that's
I don't think we should say that. I mean, I was gonna not talk about the vote specifically in any specific way at all, and talk about our impressions and what we know is the pros and cons of each of the candidates. I think if it gets to it, maybe we can mention the fact that some of the board members, but I'd rather not go there unless we have to. That's what I'm saying.
But I think we can mention that we as a community
Felt strongly.
about one.
Yeah, I think that is totally
All right.
appropriate, yeah. Yeah, I just don't want to call anyone out
Yeah.
if we don't have to.
I guess you stated it the proper way. I wanted to make it known what our thoughts were.
Yeah, yeah.
When you guys are ready. You guys okay if I run to the bathroom real quick?
Sure, go for it.
folks, we're just gonna take just like a 2-minute
They don't care.
bio break, let's be honest.
Do you want to turn that off, all the?
Chief's not here.
He was, oh, no, he's not. Oh, yeah, you're right. Interesting.
Maybe he's on duty at the station, because somebody had to be.
Right.
Two good candidates.
Yeah.
Think so?
Big time.
Really?
Yeah. First guy is, as a committee, we talked about it. His downfall is that he's never been in command of a lot of things, unlike the other guy had. The chiefs that we had on the committee, after Graham left the room, they turned to us and said, "Here's our chief."
Really?
I
I wasn't getting that.
I didn't get that vibe at all.
He seemed like he'd be capable of talking about
I
that.
lean more the other way.
Huh?
I lean more the other way.
Yeah, I think, I don't know. The other guy had the obvious, well, whatever, we should probably save it.
I was the other way.
Yeah, but Joe.
That's why it was good to have these
I don't agree. And I don't want to.
Great.
Education in the world.
That's a huge thing for me.
If you really look at the graph of the ladder like that, one of us is on the the other guy's working on the second half. It's not the awful way that. And he teaches academy. He's a leader. I mean, we may be catching a star young.
Yeah, I totally. Yeah, we know.
Oh, this might
Anthony, I live no filter, as you know.
Yeah, that's, yeah.
Yeah.
You know, especially with, we have a veteran deputy, Tom, who could have slid into the job, whether he was the right choice or not. That's a good match for a guy who comes in. The one thing he's lacking is that his, high-level management experience, which is what the first guy kind of lacks. He's never been in role in captain. But other than that, he's great. Yeah.
I think our colleagues might be favored in the first one.
Yeah, that, I didn't mind the other guy.
We'll talk about it.
A couple of things were thrown out.
I think we have a concrete reason.
Chief never saw much. It never speaks well of you when you dump on other people. And he didn't kind of show, even though he may have experienced a lot of stuff, it didn't seem to lead to a growth of a philosophy.
Is Kim in England?
Right.
I just saw a picture. I didn't know if it was an old picture of her and John.
Kim's in no, John's, that's an old,
Okay, I figured it was,
It was
but
a birthday
I
picture.
kind of flew by it, and I'm like, oh.
Kim's at home with JoJo.
What do you think? JoJo could take care of herself. Mr. Ansaldi. What's the deal with this?
I don't know.
Are we not on that?
I don't know.
No, we are, because we got that.
No, we are. I don't know why that one's there.
And I didn't even notice.
Just till right now. What's up with that?
That was just in case the system went down, the chief. It's a backup.
No comment to herself. Do you hear that, Judy? Oh, it's not Judy. Okay.
Yeah, the discussion goes, but you're right, we don't.
Yeah, I have plenty of meetings in the next.
Yeah.
Nothing, well, next week we do, we have the joint budget.
Yeah, we thought we were meeting at 7. We're not ready for anything on the 7th. The 14th is having town meeting stuff, so.
Yeah,
Got a couple of meetings.
and I'm like, I took vacation time.
Just you sit down, we'll get this going.
You'd be the bad
Folks,
guy.
we're gonna get this started here. Thank you. Anthony. Just us.
No.
So, two fine candidates. We had I think it's a good night for Littleton. I think we had a couple of very qualified individuals that came before us. Now the board gets the opportunity to discuss and deliberate. I'll just remind the board that we can certainly have this discussion. We can deliberate. We have two choices before us. We can either make a decision tonight to select one of the two candidates that was before us, or we can do some deliberation, and if we choose to continue it, we can do that as well and make a decision on a subsequent select board meeting. So there's, although it would be nice to get the wheels in motion, I'd say let's not rush anything, and let's make sure that we are mindful and thoughtful in our decision. So, like I opened up, I think we had two professionals before us. I think there's some there's qualifications that each of them bring to the table, very much qualified in the roles that they're in right now, and I think that either one of them could potentially become our next chief. And interested in seeing it, could open it up to the board. I don't know if anybody wants to take the lead, and Ms. Glade, I don't know if you want to start off, or?
Yeah, I'm just, might as well. Just looking at, since we did have our questions there as a launching point, looking at some of the comments I made on I wrote down anyway, in the first candidate, Robert Connor, offered the questions, confidence and a coherent philosophy. Not a lot of experience in the management side and the union negotiations, but had experienced it from the union president's perspective. He was pretty conversant with references like the Collins study report, and a lot of seemed to speak with confidence in a lot of the national standards, resources, NAOSH, et cetera. Had an impressive educational background. From what it reads there, he didn't speak to it as much as his resume reflected it. Working on his second master's, I would say. That's what it sounds like. He's due to complete that by next year. I thought he had very thoughtful answers on the questions about safety and legal risks. Overall, I found him very impressive. Good attitude, well-spoken, a thoughtful approach to things. I think his evident deficiencies, as a comparative basis, and just where he stands in the org structure in Holden as a captain, and the limitations that he has as a candidate are, from my perspective, pretty much limited to the fact that he is as experienced as his career path so far has let him be. And to that extent, I think he's, it looks like he's maximized all the opportunities before him and he's really seek to advance himself. Graham Rowe, just looking over some of the comments I've got here, he answered easily and with confidence to his leadership style. I think his command scene experience as a firefighter was pretty evident, some of the specific incidents he cited. He likewise had a pretty conversant knowledge of NFPA practices, that sort of thing, seemed to have done his homework to a certain extent on Littleton, had spent some time on the studies that had been done in our department. Also seemed very confident on some of those safety and legal risks. I think they were, and the approach to procedures and protocols, both of them seemed pretty strong on that. He is obviously the current deputy chief in North Andover, worked himself up the ranks, but I didn't really hear him speak to why he hasn't gone beyond an associate's degree in his education to support a management level position as a fire chief in this community or others. I found his answers pretty confident and fluent as well, but perhaps maybe not as they didn't reflect as much of a thought-out philosophy or a philosophical approach to presenting problems before him. I guess I got a sense from the two of them that as far as laying out problems, experiences, and marrying them together to come out with a coherent plan, that maybe Mr. Connor's approach to answers the questions we have here and the specifics that were pressed on him reflected that more than Mr. Rowe, but they certainly both have their strengths, and I'm very interested to hear what others have to say.
Good, sounds good. Ms. Napoli, would you like to?
Certainly, thank you.
bet.
I want to thank the search committee for bringing forward two very solid candidates for this very important position for the town of Littleton. I appreciate both candidates as well coming forward. Certainly, they have a strong background in the field, core functions of the job. They certainly could fulfill and do in the role. Personally, something about Mr. Connor, I just struck with me. I liked his ease with which he spoke. I liked his attitude. I liked his positive approach, his team-building approach, the way he talked about, he gave an example of, bridging the gap between the all-call department and the full-time department, and how he was able to, implement that. He talked about empowering people from within, not telling someone how they should feel or what they should do, but maybe hearing from them what they're looking for. And using that approach with his managerial style, I thought would be very helpful. I liked that he said the best way to build a team is to be part of it. That really struck with me. He wants to get out there. He wants to become part of the department and work side by side with the people that we have before us right now. They don't know him. He doesn't know you. But he wants to get in there with you and work side by side with you every day to build that important relationship. I liked his experience, the experiences he's had. He talked about, his experiences in Alaska, in Iraq, Brookfield, in Holden, and in other areas, both from the fire, piece of it, but also from the emergency response component as well, which is very important. As we know, living in Littleton on Route 495, sometimes you guys are out there 4 times a day. So you really need to have that background and be able to respond to those situations. And he was very, very confident with those responses. Mr. Rowe was great. I really did. I liked his experience as well. His level of confidence. I liked his progressive approach that he spoke of. And I liked the homework that he did about Littleton, that he really dove into past reports and, wanted to learn about our community and learn more about the town in general. But there was just something about Mr. Connor that it just really struck with me. I really think that he would be a great fit for the town, personally.
Thank you. Mr. Hans?
Yeah, I have a tremendous amount of respect for Mr. Connor. Like, clearly he's driven, educated, his attention to sort of the personal interactions between people and how he can lead and manage with those is incredible strength. And I believe that the committee was unanimous, and we all felt that he was basically ready to be a deputy chief somewhere and not ready to be a chief. That he has had very limited experience in terms of management and running more than 5 or 6 people. He clearly is, I mean, and I don't know, Tom, is Tom still here? Like, he's going to be a deputy chief somewhere, so I'd be very careful.
I got golf club and ski.
I know we
Don't
have.
threaten me with a good time.
We have 2 more members of the committee. If the board would like to hear from them, I'm sure that they would be happy to give their input. The other side of that is that I think in terms of interviews, every time that I've interviewed them or rated them on their resumes, they have been a dead heat. The assessment center, Mr. Connor actually did slightly better, but it was very close. I mean, it was basically within the margin of error. But I think that this is one where I think, in my opinion at least, the resume wins for Mr. Rowe. He has a tremendous amount of experience in large departments, ALS, and managing, obviously, as you heard, like huge incidents. So the committee was unanimous in believing that Mr. Rowe was a stronger candidate. Thank you.
Mr. Knox?
Being on the committee, we obviously had a chance to look at an awful lot of candidates from the very, very beginning, and they did a lot of research. There's no doubt that Mr. Connor presents himself in a professional manner, is very knowledgeable, has experience, came across very strongly in how we'd work with unions, how we get everyone involved. But going back to what we felt as a committee, and I have the same feelings, is that a couple of times it was mentioned, to be a chief, you have to be ready to make that split-second decision, and everyone has to be behind you. And that's what Mr. Rowe came across with us, is that he has the experience of leading a large fire department. He's been in charge of numerous incidents. As he pointed out, working with the marathon, he had 200 people working on that, like he has all this background. So as far as it's tough. Both candidates will do a good job for the town, but I solidly feel that Graham Rowe would be the better choice for our town. And I don't know whether, I know you're going to speak up too, but like you said, whether you'd want to ask the other members of that screening committee if that's, or even if you're supposed to.
I think it's in our hands at this point. But I do appreciate that, and I appreciate you guys have expressed what the thoughts and beliefs were. Yeah, I mean, I can reiterate what many of you has said. One of the things I noticed was with Mr. Rowe, he mentioned incident command as a lieutenant, and he was kind of thrown to the wolves, a trial by baptism by fire, I think he called it, when the Columbia gas line incident occurred. So I definitely think that command situation, incident command, was something that was one area that he certainly, in my eyes, had an edge over Mr. Connor. When I went down and we've got this ranking system, which I think we all feel as though it's just kind of a guideline to keep us kind of on track and give us some reminders of, how the process went and how the interviews went, and we've got notes to try to help us make this decision. But as I went down, and you have to compare them, right? And as I was comparing them, basically question by question and instance by instance, the way they presented themselves, the answers they gave, the resumes they have, I think the resume from a professional standpoint, they both have 20-plus years in fire service. So, and I think the 20-plus years for Mr. Connor is in a couple of different situations. He did go to Iraq and had different incident command in Iraq, and was with some call departments. His experience with Sarah Palin certainly comes to light. So only Mr. Glaive would be able to pull that out of a resume. But, so we were faced with this a few years ago, and we had a couple of professionals in front of us, highly qualified, both went through an assessment center. And we went with a candidate that did very well in the assessment center. Didn't necessarily have the better resume, if you will. But many of the adjectives that we used were community fit, philosophical fit for the department and for the membership. Some of the things that Mr. Connor said were, Matthew mentioned it much more eloquently than I am right now, but the personal and the personnel issues and how he would address those and find out what the membership needs are, and then bring those needs out and identify those and bring them out. He had a focus on employee development and training. He mentioned that in many of the answers that he gave. He talked about training and developing training and employee development and finding out what individuals want to do and where they want to go and where the town wants to go, and working towards that goal. So I'll be honest, I as I went down click by click, I would lean towards Mr. Connor as our next fire chief. And I think that, I appreciate the effort and the time that the committee put into it, but we did an assessment center, and we hired a professional service on purpose to help us with this decision. And Mr. Connor came out on top of that, and I think that the education that Mr. Glaive mentioned, the answers, to me, seemed like a better fit for the town of Littleton. And that's what we're charged with doing, is finding the next chief that's going to best serve the town. And I truly believe that Robert Connor would be the next, the best fit to be the next chief. Yeah, please.
Jump in?
Of course.
I was thinking of comparables. One of the things you're burdened with if you've been around a long time is you've had a few different experiences. I'm trying to think specific to fire chief hiring processes, and then other relevant or recent and relevant hiring processes. And I remember the chief we had, before I got on the board, the first time I was on the board, was young, had come up through our own department, and the caveats for the board that had to make the decision on whether or not to hire Chief Gary McCarraher was, gee, but he's so young and he's so inexperienced. He turned out to be stellar, and then went on to, other success in other communities, and it was Derry, New Hampshire, and Franklin, Mass. And then later on, when I was on the board, we had a candidate who clearly seemed to have the breadth of knowledge and would be a great fit for the community, but came from a small town in central Mass, and that he turned out to be the right choice for us while addressing those concerns about his resume, and that was Chief Alexander McCurdy. And, I think where we are as a community, I think we serve ourselves well to pick somebody who's going to be the next great one, and not just the one who might have a couple of more notches on the belt in terms of experience on the career ladder. In the other comparable recent hiring process, I think, is when Chief Bernard, as a sergeant, was did not, on a comparable level, look to be just on a resume level. An obvious choice to jump up to chief, but I don't think anybody here would dispute that that was the right person, because for the same qualities, I think that you two, Cindy and Chuck, have just spoken to more eloquently than I did, as far as the fit for the community, and with our understanding of the department as it is and just the reality where the town is, I still have that gut level feeling that Mr. Connor's the candidate that can best connect with that. And just given the specific circumstances where we have a very experienced deputy, if a concern is jumping too far up the career ladder to make him chief, well, I would take some comfort in knowing that he's going to be well-served by a very able deputy who could be the chief and has been the chief for the past year. So circumstances help me get over that hurdle. But beyond that, I'm very comfortable with him as a choice. But, that being said, it's worth stating again, Mr. Rowe, I could easily see him fitting in here as well and would be well-served, I'm sure. I just think there's an extra opportunity in Mr. Connor that may not be there with Mr. Rowe.
So I want to actually respond to something that you said, which was, you did hire professionals and you did ask some experienced members of the community to evaluate the candidates. And those members of the community had a pretty clear my mouth's not working, I'm sorry, a clear preference for Mr. Rowe. And I would say the assessment center was the same. It wasn't that someone stood out above it. The numbers were back and forth. Like, nobody really stood out. These two were clearly well above the other candidate. But I wouldn't say that Mr. Connor was better at the assessment center than Mr. Rowe. He had some higher scores in some areas and vice versa. So if you're going to rely on the professionals, I would say the committee has a clear preference and the assessment center was not necessarily an indication that Mr. Connor was a stronger candidate.
Right. Can I just respond to that for a second? So, and I appreciate that, Matthew, I really do, but we charged the committee with a certain task to bring forward the top two candidates. As far as assessment center scores and all of that, the three of us, we're not privy to what that entailed, what that assessment center was, what those scores were based upon. So, I appreciate that one might have had a higher score than another. But at the end of the day, you were charged with bringing us two candidates for us to make an evaluation based upon our own criteria, and, having them come before us. So I don't want to not put any weight on that, but I don't want to put a lot of weight on a process that we weren't part of. You succeeded in your process. You brought us
Sure, I
forward to
understand.
very qualified candidates. I don't want to talk about their assessment center scores or anything like that. I don't think that.
Okay.
Just because I don't know I have no idea what that process was. So you're asking me to base my decision on a score that I'm not familiar at all with the process.
Yeah, no, I just didn't want to, I think Chuck said that, that Mr. Connor had a stronger score, a stronger.
I think you said that.
I said, well, yeah, and unfortunately, I probably misspoke,
Right.
but.
And
all I'm saying is the assessment center was basically a wash between these two
Right.
candidates.
I mean, I think they're both very qualified in their own way, but I think it just comes down to, what are we looking for to be our next, who are we looking for to be our next fire chief? I think that they both can respond to an event, set up a command center, and I have, outright confidence that they can do that. But can one build a team? Can one increase participation in our on-call department? Can one do, are there skills that someone was stronger at than another that I personally feel are important for the town? And I do believe that. So.
I was going to say, frankly, I feel as though the people that we have in place can build up the incident command. We've got, to your point, an experienced deputy, we've got experienced members, professional members, and leaders at the lieutenant ranks that have been doing it. They've been doing it since last June. So I think that we're not going to slip. We're not going to go backwards by having either one of these candidates come forward.
Right.
I think that the incident command stuff, if that's where the concern is with Mr. Connor, I think these guys are going to carry him.
Yeah, I don't think that's not my concern. I don't think that was the concern of the committee. I think when you know, we were talking about the Mr. Rowe. One of the committee members said that he recently applied to be the chief in North Andover and wasn't chosen, and that was a terrible mistake that North Andover made, and Littleton should reap the benefit of that. So I don't think that I'm concerned at all about Mr. Connor not being able to handle an incident and managing the sort of mechanics of running the department. He's going to be great at that. They both are going to be great at that. I think my biggest concern is administration and management of a large department with interactions with the town administration and the select board and the budgeting process and the fire department, which is something that clearly Mr. Rowe has a ton of experience at, and I don't believe that Mr. Connor does. And that is my concern. I have to admit, if it's the pleasure of the board to hire Mr. Connor, I'm not going to die on that hill. But I want to make sure that I have a strong opinion that Mr. Rowe is a better candidate. I'm also very aware of I had coffee with Matt Pinard, and I remember when he was interviewed, and a lot of people didn't think that he was qualified. And I have to say, I think he's probably, since I've been here, maybe the strongest police chief we've had.
I think some things just don't come out in an interview like this, and it's tough. I look back at how Mr. Rowe interviewed the first time, and when he was not picked as a North Andover chief, and someone went ahead of him, there was nothing. He jumped right in to help out as much as he could, and he put it in such a nice, polite way that he went into to the chief himself so they could do the budget together, because the current person didn't have to do it. So he didn't show any signs of, I didn't get the job, that type of thing. I think that's the kind of leadership that he's showing, and some of that just doesn't come out in one interview. So it's a tough choice. Like everyone said, Cindy hit so many things right on the head that we were looking for. I agree with all that too, but maybe just with the opportunity of being able to sit and talk to professionals while we were doing this and what they were looking for and things that they pointed out, I'm still favoring Mr. Rowe, but if it's the consensus of the board to see otherwise, I have no problem with Mr. Connor.
Yeah, one of the biggest things that does stand out to me is the education piece, and Mr. Connor has invested in his education, and I think that's, I think we will reap the benefits of that, and I think that the whole shining star thing, the whole, who's going to be the next great chief, I think that I don't know how to say this as sensitively as I can, so I'm not going to be as sensitive as I can. I think that Mr. Rowe is looking to become a chief. Littleton happens to be available right now, and I'm not sure that Mr. Rowe is going to be here long-term, whereas I think that if we make the investment in Mr. Connor, I think that we've got him for a longer period of time, and I think that he is going, I'll go back to the same thing, the community fit, the philosophical approach to every answer he gave, and looking to find out what the needs are of the department and what the needs are of the membership, and to meet those needs and try to deliver on those needs in training and development. That education means something to me, and the investment that individual has made in themselves to be able to make them a better leader. And a captain in the town of Holden is 6 or 8 folks on a daily shift. I think that the transition for that particular individual who doesn't have the experience of having 22 folks at a one-day marathon, or 100 people at a one-day marathon, that kind of thing. I see the education piece in the fact that he's continuing his education right now to get even more industrial and operational psychological education is invaluable. So I really feel as though I feel strongly about Mr. Connor being our next chief. I really do. I think that means something to me, and I think that the fact that I would venture to guess that one of the reasons I don't know what the reasons were with North Andover and why Mr. Rowe didn't get the job in North Andover, having been a sitting deputy up there and doing a lot of IT, as he pointed out, IT and administrative work. I would have to venture to guess that his education played a role in that decision by the North Andover folks that were the appointing authorities.
The first thing that jumped out at me when we looked at the resumes the first time, and we did our rankings with the committee, was the educational aspect. I agreed 100%. But in what I drew out of all the time that we spent with those candidates, even without that educational aspect, I thought Mr. Rowe still stood out. But I understand where you're coming from, because I saw that right away, and he's still going to school. And there's no doubt that plays a part in this.
During those 22 years that he's been in the fire service. So much of that education took place while he was in the fire service, so. What's the pleasure of the board? Do we want to act this evening? Do we want to continue deliberation?
I mean, I'm prepared to, and I appreciate and glean something from everybody's input, but I haven't been swayed from what my original assessment was. I don't think the gap between the two candidates in terms of career, where they are in their careers, is all that great to my estimation, and I just think the opportunities and the fit would be so much better with Mr. Connor, and I'm comfortable with that. And if that were not the majority of the board, I think I could be comfortable with choosing Mr. Rowe too. But it's our job to make a choice. That's the way it works, and I'm happy with that.
Okay.
So,
Action?
yeah, sure. So it sounds like the consensus is that Mr. Connor is the stronger candidate.
That's my
I
thought.
think that's the
Okay.
inclination.
All right. And everyone's comfortable with taking a vote tonight?
I am.
Right. I move that the select board vote pursuant to Mass General Law, Chapter 48, Section 42, to appoint Robert Connor as fire chief for the Littleton Fire Department, subject to negotiation and execution of the terms of an employment contract under Mass General Law, Chapter 41, Section 1080.
Second.
Motion made by Mr. Nordhaus, seconded by Mr. Glavy. It does not require a roll call, so all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any oppositions, abstentions? Unanimous?
Yep.
Okay, great. Thank you all. Thank you all for being here. Very much appreciate it. It shows a lot of support. Appreciate it very much. Okay, I don't think we have any of the matters before us on the agenda.
Move that we adjourn?
Motion to adjourn,
I can agree to that real quick.
seconded by Mr. Glavy. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
It's unanimous.
Good night.
Thank you.